don't need a Pokemon, period.
Then what about a world-class detective? Because if you want to find your pops, I'm your best bet.
We're gonna do this, you and me.
Pokemon Detective Pikachu is a Pokemon movie about a Pikachu who is a detective. It is based on a video game that I never played, and I know literally no one who's played it. If that sounds like your thing, it is. And if it doesn't, why are you here? Get the fuck out. Pokemon has always been a special part of my childhood. I watched the anime all the time. I played some of the games, though not much. I even went to a theatrical re-release of the first movie. I got the ticket stub to prove it. So, like many other people, I was instantly intrigued by this bizarre detective story about a realistic-looking Pikachu with the voice of Deadpool, helping that annoying kid from the second Jurassic World solve a murder mystery, kind of. It was such an odd premise that I didn't exactly know what to make of it, but I knew that I had to see it, and now I have. And in order to give out my opinion, I'm not sure I could properly judge this as an actual movie. I mean, by all accounts and purposes, it is. It's actually the most critically acclaimed video game film on Rotten Tomatoes, with a stellar 63%. So how I would judge it is that, as a Pokemon fan, or at least a Pokemon familiar, the movie was more or less exactly what I expected. And I'm fine with that. I had a fun time at it. It's the kind of thing I would love to watch as a kid. And given the fact that I was an avid watcher of the anime, that is a pretty high praise. Now, if I were to seriously judge it as a movie by itself, it kinda sucks. But it's not the worst thing in the world. I'll admit right now that I probably am going to be a little more lenient on this than most other people would be, and a lot of that is because of my personal connection with the franchise. If there was another recent movie I would compare this to, it would probably be Bumblebee. I didn't care much about that film, but I also didn't have much of a personal connection to Transformers. I never watched that cartoon as a kid, that was way behind my time. So it seemed to me that the people I listened to who liked it more all had some kind of personal connection to Transformers, whether it be the cartoon, the toys, or whatever. Granted, I don't know how many film critics have connections to either of these things, given the very different scores, so this might not be the most solid of reasoning, but it's how I try to make sense of things. It's the same as saying I kinda like the Captain Underpants movie because I grew up reading the books. It's sort of an odd gray area between nostalgia and critic, though not nostalgia critic.
I'm the master of fucking subtlety!
So allow me to proceed with this possibly biased film review, in which I dive into what's easily the best element about it, its production design. I love the look of this city. I mean, neon lit cities at night has always been a favorite aesthetic of mine, but it's especially cool just to see this kind of noirish environment with Pokemon everywhere. And that's another thing that I love, the realistic designs of the Pokemon. I mean, sure, some look off-putting to say the least, but I found it really clever that they chose to go this route. When I was growing up on the anime, it's always been kind of a low-key wish of mine to have Pokemon in the real world, just to befriend them even. And I'm sure millions of other kids probably had that same dream as well.
Pikachu, come here!
I thought I was man's best friend.
That's probably a big reason why Pokemon Go was such a hit. The idea of these lovable little creatures running around your park is just so cool. And this, I feel, is the best realization of that concept. It's clear that the people making this actually gave a shit about the source material. We have little references to Arceus and the lyrics of the theme song. We're at the point now in which it's no longer acceptable to make a video game movie like Super Mario Bros., where you have Bowser portrayed as a spiky-haired Dennis Hopper, or the Goombas being these tiny-headed dinosaur creatures. Like, what the hell were they fucking thinking? And if you're a video game fan, and you have low expectations walking into this, don't worry. They actually played the Sonic the Hedgehog movie trailer in front of this, just to put you into the mindset that you could be watching worse. Who'd have thunk it that we'd have actually appealing character designs from the same director who brought us Shark Tale? Yeah.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
In terms of the lead performances, Ryan Reynolds was fine as Pikachu. He's pretty much just playing Ryan Reynolds, only in the body of a yellow anime rodent, along with some more PG-rated restraints. There are several actors who are on the wish list for this role. Pretty much all of them were very burly men. But apparently the animation team did test out footage with Danny DeVito's voice. Now that would have been something.
You can hear him, right?
Pika Pika! Yeah, Yeah, Pika Pika Pika, he's adorable.
I got my Magnum condoms, I got my Wad 100s, I'm ready to plow.
I once heard some actual news that the studio considered going the PG-13 route for this. I mean, we do hear Pikachu swear a little.
Get me the hell out of here!
But with that kind of rating, that would have been the golden opportunity for him to look into the camera and go all
Fuck you.
But it made more business sense to go the PG route. This is the franchise that got its audience through little kids to begin with. But Reynolds does do a pretty good job working with what he has. I do kinda wish they went a little farther with the hard-boiled detective angle. He calls a woman a dame at one point, but that's really about it. The actor who plays his sidekick, Justice Smith, no relation to the Sharktail Smith,
That's hot.
does a surprisingly alright job. I say that because the only other role of his I'm familiar with was the screaming guy from Jurassic World 2, who was one of the worst parts about that film.
Where does that tunnel lead?
It's the T-Rex. It's the T-Rex. It's the T-Rex. Claire, it's the T-Rex. It's the T-Rex. It's the T-Rex.
Stop, it's not the T-Rex.
We made it!
I'm not gonna act like he's done the greatest job in the world, but given that he's in the Pokemon movie, and he spends most of his screen time talking to a Pikachu, I'd say he's serviceable enough. Ditto for pretty much every other actor involved, except for the girl. I did not like her performance, or her character. She came off as annoying and kind of useless. It seemed like they were building her up as a love interest character, but there was not a single ounce of chemistry between those two. Like, I'm not even sure where they're even gonna go with that. The action sequences, well, I'm not sure they're the best directed. They do have really fun set pieces. Like, the underground battlefield arena kind of is what it is, but there was an actually pretty cool chase scene set on top of giant Torterra, where all the trees and grass areas start folding into one another. It's basically this scene from Inception, but it's a forest. There is also a scene involving a Ditto that takes on a human form, and let me tell you, a human form Ditto is seriously one of the most unsettling images I've seen in a long time. There is also the interrogation scene with Mr. Mime. There's nothing actiony about that scene, I just love how dark it got at the end. It made me chuckle, and I don't chuckle easy. There are definitely issues regarding the story of it. It really does play out as an average children's buddy detective thing, and all the cliches it comes with, including the second act we have to split up because of contrived reason thing. But even besides that, there are things in this story that just kinda confuse me. Like how the beginning establishes that Pikachu is amnesic, but he's able to correctly guess that he's a detective. And he knows some details about the detective's son. Never really establishes how much he does or doesn't know. Another thing that wasn't very well explained was the villain's plan. I'm not gonna get into any detail about it since I don't plan on making this a spoiler review, but I don't really understand what his motivation for doing it was. I mean, maybe for himself I kinda get, but what does the whole world at large expect to gain from this? Mewtwo I thought was weirdly handled in this. It felt like they were trying to do the same thing with Pokemon the first movie, in that Mewtwo's introduced in the beginning to establish how big of a threat he is, but his introduction felt weirdly rushed, and the explanation for where he came from or where he was found is rather flimsily explained. At a certain point where he explains what exactly his deal is, it felt kind of unearned. Like Pokemon the first movie I felt did a better job explaining who he is, and why he was brought here, and why he chose to act this way. He's not like a complicated character or anything, it just felt like he didn't have enough of a presence here. Okay, this is a very personal, specific, nitpicky criticism, but I felt like the opening credits of this film were really lame. You'd expect us to have big flashy logos and titles to get people excited for the movie they're about to see, but no, it's just regular logos and white text on black screen. To be fair, they do have a flashy ending sequence, but man, you're supposed to hype your audience up from the beginning, not put them to sleep with something that even I could do. There's a twist in this film that I probably should have guessed earlier, but I was like, wait, what? Again, I'm not going to say what it is, but it did remind me of the twist from Kubo and the Two Strings. If you've seen that movie, you could probably guess what I'm talking about. So there are already plans to make a sequel to this, which makes sense from a business standpoint, but is really confusing having seen the movie because it ends on a pretty conclusive note. Like, however they're going to continue this is going to be kind of weird. In all honesty, I would prefer them to not make another one of these. That is to not make any more Pokemon movies in general, no. I meant make more Pokemon movies, but have each of them be kind of a different genre. Like, this is already the mystery one. Have the next one be, I don't know, a romantic comedy, a slasher one. That would actually be pretty scary. There are directions to take this universe. And you know, despite me kind of ragging on this film a little for most of the review time. I did have a lot of fun watching this. I mean, it's cheesy, it's weird, it has blatant fan service, it's childish and goofy, but that's kind of what I wanted in a Pokemon movie, and it delivered fairly well. It's definitely the right direction for a video game movie to take, and I'd say it's worth watching just to see all the Pokemon in the background, although they didn't put in my childhood favorite Hitmontop, bastards. Check it out if you're into this. 5 out of 10.